Okay, good morning, all the champs, and a big hello to all. Stay home, stay safe is the slogan for the day. And while staying home, we are going to learn some new things, all right? So, developing web applications using servlets and JSP. So, I'll have to give you the recap of what we learned yesterday. Okay, now what is JSP? JSP is Java Server Page, and it consists of following components: JSP components, JSP directives, JSP declarations, JSP comments, JSP scriptlets, JSP expressions, JSP actions, and JSP implicit objects, right? And now today we have to understand all in a much better way so that we can cope up with this and start writing JSP programs like a pro, right? So let's get started. And we already know what directives, what comments, and what scriptlets are. Okay, so since we know them, so what we are going to do today is do few more examples and check few more examples of scriptlets and every single thing, right? So we said that whenever we want to declare, we'll declare it like this, and to write any code other than declaration, we write scriptlets. Okay, and this is declaration, this is scriptlets, and to print anything, right? So this is the shortcut for printing. So since you all know that we have promised you learning alongside development and learning alongside developing a small project, so this is what we are going to do now. All right, so this is the application JSP class 1. So I'll try and make few folders so that we start making our project as soon as possible. Okay, right. So let me first show you how to make a form. So now here we have the luxury of writing complete HTML code, right? Not without, or we can say not writing everything inside out.println, right? So because JSP can embed everything directly. JSP can embed Java directly. So that's why I will not write any code, but only UI here. Form action. If I keep it empty, so this means it's self-action. Self-action means that I am submitting whatever is in the form back to index.jsp. So it is as good as writing index.jsp. So it doesn't matter if I write index.jsp or if I do not write anything. It means self-posting. So method equals post. So we know there are, so far what we are learning are two HTTP methods. One is HTTP GET and another is HTTP POST, right? So we already know that GET is usually used to retrieve data from the web server, and POST is used to submit data to the web server, right? Okay, so let's make a table. So I'll make a table right here quickly. A table has a table row and a table division. You can easily say enter, or let us keep it empty here. So td. Okay, so I will say login panel. All right, let's say input type equals text name txt username, right? So, or let's keep it in some other. Let's keep this for message. Okay, let's create another tr and create another td, and now right here enter your user name. Okay, as good as anything. So another td, and let's close it down. Okay, so input type text name is equivalent to txt username. Why do we give names? So that we fetch the data, right, by name whenever user submits the said form. Okay, let us copy this and paste it. Enter your password. Input type is going to be txt password, the name, and input type password. So here we are directly writing HTML code without any hindrances at all. So let's say keep it blank and say input type submit, name is equivalent to, or let's say value is equivalent to login. Right, so this is it. We have been able to directly write HTML here, okay, isn't it? Yeah, we have been able to directly write HTML. You can see this is how your form may look like. So the moment I hit login, you can see here the form is getting submitted back to the web server. Now it depends on the web server how we handle the form submission. So I'll go here on top, right here, open Scriplets and say write string username is equivalent to request dot get parameter and the name. What is the name? txt user name. Alright, so string password is equivalent to request.getParameter txt password. Alright, so what are we going to do here? That whenever request is submitted, we know that web is about two different things. Web is about request and response, right? So we have been learning this from quite a while now, that website and web is all about request and response. Right? So the request comes from the client, the request goes to the web server, right? And the web server sends desired response, right? So this is the request to the server, request goes to web server, and it is the web server going to send a proper response back to the client, right? So this is what it's all about. So this is client, and this is client sending, okay, and this is the client, and the client sends a request. Okay, I'm setting color too, sorry. Sending a request to the web server, and the web server sending response back. So this is what web is all about, right? So since we know this already, all the students who are familiar with web technology, they know that it's all about request and it's all about response, right? But as a web developer, we don't only handle the request and response. We don't only give the request and response. We'll have to see that every valid request has a valid response, right? Not every invalid request has a valid response also, right? So this is how we basically deal with. So I'll just define two arrows for you so that you understand what is going on here. Alright, so these arrows are nothing but the request and response mechanism of the web server. Is that clear? Okay. Now why have I developed this diagram right here? To show you what is happening behind the scenes, right? So behind the scenes, the request is taken by Apache container, right? And there are many different things that happen. Apache doing the rendering and sending the response back as HTML, right? So you know that. So but you have to understand that whatever code we write here is going to be given back to the client as HTML, and whatever request client is submitting, the request is submitted as HTML request. Now you can see this. What do we call this? We call this HTML form, right? Now the server has to know the way where it can where server can extract username and password from the HTML form. That means the static request has to be converted to dynamic request, and then if I say out.println, right? So I will say username plus password, okay? All right. So what I do here, out.println username plus password, I'm printing it back. That means this is via request. So this is taken by request, or we can say, yeah, and giving response. Both require rendering. Who says only response requires a rendering? I'll have to convert this code back to HTML, because what you want at the end of the day is only username and password. You're not interested in what is happening at the background, aren't you? You're not interested in what's happening in the background. Who is barking, who is eating, who is taking food, right? So that's none of your business. Your business is only what you do, right? Or what you require. You require username and password being printed back to you, and this is your requirement. So let's see that first, and then do rest of the things. So I'll say my name is Fahim and password is password. So I'll say login, and you get the username and password back. Okay, so that's what you want. But it's not only about that. You are going to be a professional developer. There's a difference between being a developer, being a professional developer, being a secure developer. We'll be professional, we'll be secure, we will be good in UI, good in source code, right? Effective, right? And whatever is required to make good, complex, normal applications, we are going to adapt every single thing here. So we are printing it out. But the major difference here is that if I now reload, I'm getting a null. Why am I getting null here? Right? So had it been servlets, it could have caused null pointer exceptions right here, right? But it's not servlets, so why are we getting nulls here? Because we know that whenever we load the web application, right, we load HTTP GET, right? So let me show you an example right here. Because once you load the web application, you are not loading post, right? You are loading get, and request.get parameter txt username is taking username from here when your form is posting, not getting, right? So that is the main difference. So let me show you one example right here. So I will say if request.get method is equivalent to post, right? So I will say out.print post. It's unlike servlets, right? In servlets we have do, get, and do post differently defined and predefined, that we override from the HTTP servlet. So we don't have it here. We have to explicitly handle this here in JSP. So I'll say else out.print get called. Now let us see which method is called when you load the web application for the first time. You can see get called. When you load the application for the first time, get is called. Now when I click the login button, post is called. Why is post called? Only because the form submission method, the HTML form submission method is post. What do you call them as? Right, so I'll write it down here so that you understand in a much better way, and I'll give you the file so that you can download and keep the sketch. Because what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to make you Java developers, and similarly asides, I'm trying to make you aware about interviews and keep you ready for interviews and all the questions they ask, and for Java examinations as well, right? So post and get, right? Post is HTTP post and get is HTTP get. Okay, right? So what are these, right? So I said these are verbs, action, right? Verb is something that tells to perform any action. So HTTP post, and I can say HTTP verbs or methods, right? So now what are HTTP verbs or methods? We know that it's a submission method and it's a verb. Why is it a verb? Because it tells you, or it tells the server to perform any particular action. All right. So now we know that get is loaded. Okay, loaded with the site. Right. So I don't call it. Needs to be called explicitly. So you have to call post explicitly one more time. Right, when you load the application, get is called, and when you click the login button, post is called. So well, I try and do here. Right, so this is what we did earlier, taking txt username and taking txt password, html elements. So these are html elements, txt username and txt password. We're taking them whenever the form is submitted, right? So that is why if I load the site for the first time, we're getting null. Right, so let us load, we're getting nulls, and when I log in, right, hit the post, we're not getting null. So they are defined on post, right? So you can see here for method is post, and we are defining them on post, right? So that is why we'll have to secure them. We know, as I have already told you, that our job is to give proper response, right? So I will say if re request dot get method is equivalent to post. So I'm doing conditional formatting right here. All right, so and it's our job to indent our code properly. So string username is equal to request.get parameter txt username. String password is equivalent to request.get parameter txt password. Right, so it's up and running and ready for you to lock your horns and start. No error neither on get nor on post. So this way you have secured the null pointer exception also. And if you want to see the, let's concatenate to see the username and password. Okay, let's give a bit of space by just concatenating them to see username and password is coming by Fahim is my username and password is password. So now it's working fine, and on get it's not doing anything. On post it's taking, right? So the second thing that we are going to do here is we'll hard code it, because we're not applying any object oriented logic yet, but maybe next one or two classes, once you are familiar with the environment, once you are familiar with the environment that we are trying to build, you can basically skip using Jsp, right? So because we don't write code in Jsp, it's not a professional job. It's our job is only to use Jsp page for UI, right, purposes. So but yeah, just to understand it, to start learning, we have to basically know everything, every do and every don't as well, right? Isn't it your duty to know both do's and don'ts? Yeah, so that's why I'm trying to give you some professional ways and show you some ways that are not good. Okay. So we will be hard coding for 2 or 3 lectures before we start going back to the original complete object oriented way, right, and apply the MVC pattern. Okay, fine. So now since we have taken the username and password, so I can hard code it here. I can say if username, so I will say if username dot equals, we know in Java we use dot equals for string comparisons. Okay, so let's say about if username dot equals FAHIM and password, or let's say about if username dot equals empty and password dot equals empty. And if you're not giving username and password, or I will say let's say out dot println, right, please write a username and a password. All right, else, right, so I'll say else if username dot equals, let's not say else if, so I'll say else and then say if here, username dot equals FAHIM and password dot equals PASS, right? So I'll say out dot println logged in, right? And then go here and type else out dot println take a incorrect username or password. So this is where we are applying formatting here. If username is blank and password is blank, if say about let's say suppose username and password is not entered by the client, so printing him please write a username and password, because guiding the user through is the job of web developer, because we'll have to guide the user through by giving nice user friendly message and the message that are clearly understood by the user, right, or by the client. So that's why we're guiding the user through here. Sorry, if username dot equals Fahim and password dot equals password out dot println logged in, else out dot println incorrect username or password. So let us try and see and say let's say we are not writing anything at the first instance. We get please write a username and password, and I write wrong incorrect username and password, and then I write the correct one. We will be attaching inshallah database and doing everything dynamically, right? So I apply correct username and password, and here I get logged in, right? What we have learned so far is that this is what I don't know, a student asked me yesterday what scriptlets are. These are what scriptlets are. Open scriptlets and start doing Java code. Only thing that you cannot do here in scriptlets is that you cannot declare things, right? Okay, and the second thing that I want to show you and tell you is that I kept this empty right here. Okay, and let me do one thing right here. Okay, if let me do string message, so let me define string message, and out.print instead of out.println I'll say message is equivalent to this, and instead of out.println I will say message is equivalent to this, and instead of out.println I'll say message is equivalent to this, assigning message variable all the messages, and then go here, and this answers your question of what expressions are used of. So I'll just use expressions to echo the message. You can see variable message might not have been initialized, but we have initialized it. Why not? So why are we getting this error? Okay, string message is not initialized, so I'll initialize it with blank string. Okay, so now you can see no error is here. You cannot terminate an expression, you'll get an error, and an expression contains only one statement, and it is an alternate for out.println, or you can say short form for out.println. Isn't that so? Alright, so let's see again. Okay, now you can see that we're getting nice user defined message. Let me format our table first. I'll say cell spacing is equivalent to 5 and cell padding is equivalent to 5, right? Okay, and I'll format this as well. So I will say style. I know that inline styling is not good, but since we're not learning HTML, we're learning JSP here, so color is equivalent to alright, so let me show you again. Please write a username and password. Now you can see you're getting it formatted and at the right place. And if I write something which is wrong, so incorrect username or password. Now if I write correct username and the correct password, which is pass only, and I click on login, so I'll say logged in. Now you can see many students ask me that why do we use input type submit instead of input type button. Now what button does, okay, see, when I click on login, okay, you can see the form is not being submitted back to web server. That's the reason why we use input type submit, because if it's input type button, we might have to explicitly create event handlers for handling this button submission, right? So you have to create an extra event handler. So this is more required for JavaScript and Node.js programming, so that we are going to also integrate. We're going to use Ajax and Node.js with Jsp right here. But for now, that button cannot be used since it requires explicit actions for event handlers. Let's say if I say on click, right? So I will say JavaScript, right? Right, so I'll say on click JavaScript alert, right? So what I say, whenever you click on this button, please alert, right? You can see now alert is happening, or I can say alert hello. I can see alert hello is happening. All right, so I can say now on click submit. Okay, so I can call submit here on click. Now you can see the form is submitted again, because I've said on click. I made an explicit event handler for a button which says on click JavaScript, right? So this is an indication I'm telling that I'm using JavaScript ahead of it, right? So I'm telling the source code or the compiler that or the browser directly, because JavaScript is being interpreted by the browser, so that it's following a submit, or it's following a JavaScript code which is submit. And what this submit does is completely submits the form by using HTTP post method back to web server, right? So now there is another problem, because we are using HTTP button and it's working exactly the same way. Now you can see enter key is not working. I want to write username and password and hit enter key. As you know that we are very fond of hitting enter keys, we hardly try and click the button, right? So for that you also have to change many different things. So that is why for forms we use input type submit. What submit does, not only submits the form back to web server, right? So it also activates your enter key. Now if I write Fahim and I write password, see where my mouse is here, and I click enter and still I get logged in, right? So I'm able to execute the code just like this also, right? Instead of clicking on the login button again and again, right? So I can hit enter key and start working like pro, right? So let's get ahead and give me 2 minutes. I'll come back and join you as soon as possible. Okay. All right, students. So let's start again. Okay. So you have seen how we utilize the string message and printed the message in a very nice manner, right? Here. And so you're familiar of how, where and when to use expressions and where to use scriptlets. So let's see how to use declarations now in a much practical way. So I'll declare declaration here. So this is Jsp declaration. Okay. And let's say it's a function public boolean is valid. Okay, so this is the function is valid, and it takes string. I'm going oops slowly and steadily. Let's say it's string username and string password. Okay. It's boolean, so we have to return either true or false. So I will say if. All right, so I will say if username dot equals empty and password dot equals empty. If both are empty, then do this. So I'll do another thing today. If they are not empty, then do this. Else means else will take empty values now. right? So if they are not empty, if you have written something in username and if you have written something in password, what is username and password? Something when you call the function is valid and you pass them as arguments, right? So those arguments will be checked here, validated here, and a nice output will be generated. So let me have this string message here. Okay, so let me say this dot message is equal to please write a username and a password. Okay, else write, no, not here, so I will say, okay, so I will say message is equal to please write a username and password. And now if everything goes fine, so I will say return true, and if there is any problem, return false. So this function returns true when the data is validated, and if the data is not validated, the function returns false. So now let us create another function. I'll copy the same function and I'll paste it here with some new values and new things. Okay, so I'll say if the user is authentic, which user? The username and password that you're passing from here. If username dot equals Fahim and password dot equals pass return true, else the message that is given is incorrect username and password, right? Okay, so let's carry on with this here. So I will delete this hard-coded if and else here, right? So I'll do simply one more thing. I'll try and encapsulate both the functions in a single function. Let's make them private and make this function as private. Okay, and what is the class? You're declaring functions where the class, the page acts as a class, which is index.jsp, right? So let's make another public function, public void login. So login will encapsulate both the functions right here. So I will say if the function name is, if it is valid, what username and password. So this login function will also accept string username and string password. Alright, so this string username and string password will be validated. If it is valid, then do this. Alright, and if the username and password is valid, I will check for if is. So let's say if after is valid, I'm having private boolean is authentic. So I'll check for two things. If is authentic, and I'll pass username and password here. Alright, so then do this. What do you want to do? I will say return true, else I will say no, we cannot return true and return false, so we just have to call these functions and that's it. Right, so if it is valid, and then call this if it is authentic. Okay, and if it is authentic, what you got to do here before you're returning true and false, okay, say message is equal to logged in, or I can concatenate the username. So I'll say username plus Tigger is logged in. The username is that you have provided has finally logged in. So let's say what is happening here. I have a separate function that I'm declaring in declarations, and that takes two arguments. It takes username and password as argument and checks whether the username and password is valid, or checks if the length is greater than 0, right? And if user has given something, then return true, else return false. But before returning false, please fill this message, initialize it with this string, please write a username and password. And then I have a separate function which is private again, that takes two arguments, string username and string password, and if the username dot equals Fahim and the password equals password, return true, else return false. It's just to make you understand what declarations are, and this login function does nothing but encapsulate both of them, and if everything goes fine, you say the username is logged in. And now what we do here is we simply say we call the function which is login and pass the same username and password, or you can pass the username and password directly. Username is the request.getParameter txt username, and password is request.getParameter txt password, and that's it. Alright, so you're passing it to the function login in scriptlets. Why are we using scriptlets? Since we're not declaring anything here. So all login is already declared. So when I call login checks if it is valid, and if it is valid, then I'm checking if it is authenticated. So what am I doing here? I have encapsulated. We have encapsulated is valid and is authentic here, and is valid and is authentic are doing separate jobs. I still know this is not the way we write the code. We cannot use user interface for writing this kind of a code, but since we have to make you understand about the do's and don'ts, right? So this lecture is only for you to understand what declarations are and what scriptlets are, and the third thing, what expressions are. If you have understood, now everything is fine. Right, so calling the function, right, and as soon as you call the function, the parameter message gets filled in the function also. So let's see if the program behaves in the same manner. Incorrect username and password, please add a username and password. I type username and password, incorrect username and password, and I say incorrect username and password. Okay, so let us say correct you. What is the correct username and password? I just forgot because I hard coded it, so I don't remember. Username, if username dot equals, okay, it's not equal, so I'll have to get rid of this not here, right? So not equals is not going to work. If the username is equivalent to Fahim and password is password, okay, fine. So we'll try it again. We should get logged in. So let us say Fahim and password is pass. So Fahim is logged in. All right. So we know that we still have to use many things like sessions and every single thing, right? I promise I'll be showing you 110% authentic object-oriented, authentic aspect-oriented, and every single thing that is required to developing valid, large-scale, and secure web applications using JSP. But just to start with, I think this is sufficient. You got to practice and practice as much as you can, so that you're familiar with the code, you're familiar with every single thing, and you work like a pro, right? So take care. Bye bye. That's it.